Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Triangle Offense. I'm Munish. As always, I'm joined by Nishant.
Hey,
We had a fantastic playing game. It was a perfect advertisement for the playing game, wasn't it? The Lakers taking on the Warriors. Steph Curry at his absolute best. LeBron James not at his absolute best, but still got the job done like he always does, making it count. The Lakers going through, which was also much needed for the NBA. And you got a close game. It was worthy of an NBA final, if anything, and it was just for a playing game. What a game! Now, on today's episode, we'll talk about the previews for the playoffs, and we'll start off with the Lakers because they just qualified and they take on the Phoenix Suns. The games are not going to be as easy as it was. It was not easy against the Warriors, but the opponents are just going to get tougher and tougher. And you starting off against the Phoenix Suns, how do you feel about that? How long do you think the series is going to go? And do Lakers actually start as favorites for this one?
oh, they should start as overwhelming favorites. I don't think that's even a debate. I think they do. I think most odds makers have the Lakers as favorites, especially now that LeBron's back playing and he's in a good mood. He doesn't hate the playing games anymore. Apparently, should be at least. But no, I think the Lakers are too strong for the Suns. And I've said this before. If we can take for granted fitness, which is a big if for the Lakers, and their entire squad is fit and fine and healthy, they'll romp through the West. It's going to be only too one-sided in the West this season. Maybe next season it gets a little more complicated, especially with Klay Thompson back. But this season, I don't see any team really troubling the Lakers, except Clippers if they're at their best. And that's also a big if because the Clippers don't have that outburst of energy off the bench in Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell. So that's an interesting angle to the Clippers, but spare them. I really don't see anyone stretching the Lakers in the West, and that includes the Suns. It's a great team. Chris Paul has done amazingly well so far. Devin Booker's a superstar. There's a chip in his career somewhere, but this isn't it. This is year one for a lot of them. I just don't see them overcoming the Lakers, especially when games get tight. Game one is whatever, but game two, three, four, as you progress in the series, and both Chris Paul and LeBron are cerebral like that, so they'll try to figure out ways to pick each other apart. But in terms of execution, the Lakers have an upper hand. There's just too many players in rotation. There's a plan B, C, and a D, as Vogel showed against the Warriors. I think it's too much for the Suns to overcome, and I don't think in tight closeout moments, I absolutely think they can score. Booker, Chris Paul, these guys can get it done even in the clutch.
Yep.
But I don't think they can stop as much. I don't think they can get those critical stops when it's a 2 point game, 5 point game, and you need to hit those big balls shots, but then also stop the other guy from scoring so that you gain momentum. I don't think they have what it takes to pull it off. One game maybe, but that's about it. So I'm calling a gentleman's sweep. I think it's Lakers in five. If they do really well for themselves, it's the Suns. I mean, then it's Lakers in six. But I don't see much more in this series.
That'll be quite a statement, won't it? I mean, there's been I don't think there's ever been a seven seed that has gone into the
Oh,
playoffs as the favorites. That's going to be an absolute treat to watch. But I think we are kind of underrating the Phoenix Suns here. They've been a great team to watch throughout the season. I know a lot of these are young guys and their first time in the playoffs, including Devin Booker. But Devin Booker is built for the playoffs. This seems like he fits in here. It's kind of automatic for him. Chris
sure.
Paul, he has all those years of experience behind him. I don't think he'll be nervous at all.
Mm.
He's facing against LeBron for the first time ever in the playoffs. Wow.
Yeah.
Throughout their long careers, they never faced
I
against
think they were
each other
never
in the playoffs.
were they in the same conference except like last season.
Probably not.
Yeah, because LeBron's
Probably not.
always in the West, and I'm trying to think. Chris Paul was he
He's
was in New Orleans, then
He was
Clippers. Yeah, he's been in the
when he was
West.
in Rockets, LeBron was in the East still.
So he's been in the West. Only the last two seasons were the overlap. Last season, of course, they could have faced off, but the Rockets knocked them out. And the year before that, Lakers didn't even make the playoffs. So
Yeah, that'll be an interesting game. I think we're kind of underrating the Phoenix Suns here. I really thought they would finish the top seed, but late choke against the Denver Nuggets and the Portland Trailblazers.
but
Close games at the end. They kind of lost little bit of momentum there. But I think over the course of the season, I've been backing the Phoenix Suns since the start. I said if they'd face the Clippers, they'd beat the Clippers. So I think it'd be a tough matchup. But I think the Lakers, like you said, are way too deep. I don't think they would lose this series at all. But I think it's going to be a close one. It'll go to 6 for sure.
yeah, I don't know if
If
it's underrating them though, because okay, let's flip the question. If I ask you, um, the Lakers are coming in as the 7th seed, and maybe that's weighing in on people's minds. If this Lakers team hadn't lost LeBron and AD, they were stomping their way across the West before these guys got injured. They'd have been the runaway number one in the West. Let's say Phoenix finished second anyway. They don't choke against Denver and they finish second. At some point in the playoffs, assume these two face each other. I don't know the permutations, but let's say that happens. And I pick the Lakers, and most people do. Would that be underrating the Suns? I don't think so. I don't think anyone's saying Suns don't deserve it. I think what I'm saying is nobody in the West, it could be the Suns, it could be the Jazz. What I'm saying is nobody stands a chance against this Lakers squad unless they're hit by injuries. It's not going to happen. The only team that can give them a run for their money is the Clippers.
Okay. No, you're right. But the fact remains that AD and LeBron has missed quite a bit of time. AD was stretched yesterday. He played 41 minutes. He played the entire second half without even sitting a second. LeBron James, as you saw, he was still a little scratchy in the first half. Then he just turned on. He just flipped that switch like he always does in the second half. But can it continue throughout the course of the playoffs? We'll see. I still think the Lakers are favorites, but I think it'll be closer than you expect it to be. I don't think it's going to be a sweep.
Yeah, but that's
like
going
the
to be
last
fitness,
season.
right? Basically, what you're saying is, again, it boils down to fitness. The only reason anyone gives the Suns even a shot at picking up a couple of games is either because LeBron's rusty or AD is coming back or they're not fully fit or, the injury might relapse. And that's my point. If that happens, sure, I'd give anyone a chance. I'd give the Jazz a chance, the Nuggets. But if they're back playing like these guys do in the playoffs without fitness concerns, it's a no contest. I think that's my point. So yeah, maybe if they're carrying the injuries, yes, then you would have to give Suns a fighting chance.
Yeah, regardless of whatever happens, I think that's going to be a one feisty matchup. I think Booker is built for these playoffs. It's going to be fun to watch him in the playoffs.
Sure.
Squaring up against the best team in the league, well, not a bad way to start your career in the playoffs. So that's going to be fun. The other feisty matchup that I'm looking forward to in the West, the Mavs take on the Clippers. I mean, that's a repeat of last season first round game where it was kind of spoiled, right? I mean, first the referees ejected Porzingis, which means the Mavs didn't win that game. Then Porzingis got injured, which means Luka had little too much to do on his own. Despite Clippers choking and Marcus Morris, was it Marcus? Yes, it was Marcus Morris stamping on Luka and getting ejected himself.
Yep.
Paul George not being Paul George. It was a little too much. I think the quality in Clippers kind of came through for them. Luka had little too much to do. Probably 3-4 years down the line when he has more experience, it's probably be enough, but not yet. Now Porzingis is back. He's been playing the last few games. He's missed 29 games this season. That's as many games as what Kawhi and Paul George together missed this season. So they played 43 games together. Porzingis played 43 games together. So kind of mix and match over there. But Porzingis is back. Paul George and Kawhi are back. How do you think this series is going to go?
It's a bit of a depleted Mavericks on two fronts. One, they've let go of some shooting firepower in Seth Curry. And they kind of went with Josh Richardson, who they think is an overall better player, a better defender, can bring the ball up the court. Sure, I think overall they have a point. But that shooting prowess is something that could be very useful in playoff games if you know how to use them. And with a playmaker like Luka, you'd believe he'd know how to use him. Excuse me. The second reason and the bigger reason why I consider the Mavs a bit depleted is Porzingis is a crucial part of what the Mavs do. Luka's the talisman. He's the guy that gets them going. But Porzingis, he's like a 18, 20 and 10, 12-ish kind of player. Give you a few good blocks for good measure, strong rim protection. And he's an outside threat, so there's spacing, there's blah, blah, blah. There's all that good stuff. But his biggest asset on that Mavs team is actually on defense because Luka is strong enough to get that offense going even when Porzingis isn't around.
True.
But on defense, that's a big miss. There's only so much that Powell can do and the other guys can do. I think Porzingis, if he shows up and is his usual defensive self like last season, then the Clippers have a problem because I'm favoring the Mavs in that series. But if you don't get that version of Porzingis, not even talking about fitness concerns, I'm talking about how much defense can he play. If you don't get that Porzingis, then yeah, it's tough. It'll be a 6-game series minimum, but it's tough to see the Mavs going through. I think it all boils down to what level Porzingis comes back at.
I think it all boils down to the non-Luka and non-Porzingis minutes versus the non-Kawhi and non-Paul George minutes. I think
Hmm.
the Clippers bench is stronger than the Mavs bench. Mavs bench is Tim Hardaway Jr., who's been really good.
Yeah.
But then apart from him, it's Jalen Brunson, JJ
Right.
Barea, and Boban if he gets a turn. So I don't think they have that quality in there to beat the Clippers based on their depth itself. Similar to the Lakers, I think Lakers are pretty deep, and so are the Clippers. The problem with Clippers, I always felt throughout the season, was they didn't know how their starting five would be. I think they've kind of
Yeah.
figured it now. They're stronger than what they were maybe a month ago.
Yeah.
So I think Clippers are going to take this one. It's going to be close because Luka's not going to go down without a fight. Similar to Booker, he's
No,
built
yeah.
for the playoffs.
Hmm.
He's a future MVP for sure. So he's not going to go down without a fight. But I think Clippers are little too good for them, unfortunately.
He's also I feel Luka MVP for sure. I think he has a championship in the near future and definitely sooner than Booker unless there's a swap of clubs happening. Yeah, I could tend to agree with. There's also the playoff rondo factor in LA, which is something they distinctly lacked last season. Not just his play on the court, his leadership in the locker room, his IQ at helping the team strategize and running audibles on the court, making reads. All of that stuff is something they sorely missed uh, last season. Then so that's another thing in their favor. So it's the Clippers series to lose, but it's easy for me. This is the one series that I'm looking forward to the most in the entire first round of the playoffs. I know there are some mouth-watering clashes in the East, but this is the one I'm most excited about because there's so many narratives here. Paul George's redemption, Kawhi just written off after one bad. That's all he had. He had one bad game
One
last
bad
season.
game, yeah.
One bad game 7, and that's it. Like you'll write the man off. So there's something there. There's also the whole Clippers they went for broke. It was an all or nothing strategy.
True.
And this season is the definition of all or nothing because if they end up without at least a conference final strip, if not a final strip, they could legit see a future where Kawhi Leonard opts out, which he can do at the end of the season, become a free agent. Yeah, I hear Golden State are looking for a two-way wing now that Clay is back next season.
I
You
won't
never know.
complain.
So yeah, so there's too many narratives, and then there's the whole revenge from last season, Luka and Porzingis. So it's going to be a fun series.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun series. Kind of a trend here, don't you think? You pick the lower seed, you pick Lakers, you pick Mavs. Would you also pick the Portland Trailblazers if they're playing the Denver Nuggets?
No, oh, by the way, I picked the Mavs only if Porzingis is back defending like a beast. Otherwise, it's the Clippers all the way. And I picked the Lakers. So who the hell won't pick the Lakers? But for Trailblazers is stretching it a bit too far. Much like, and we're going to talk about Boston, right? And we're going to talk about a couple of other teams, which are pretty much the same thing from last season. It's the exact same thing. What works for them is the exact same stuff as last season. What doesn't work or is an area of improvement, let me put it in HR terms, it's the same damn thing. So I don't know, and they've given up some firepower shooting in Gary Trent Jr.
Right.
So in exchange they get a guard, and they get a full-blown guard, one that can run the ball, one that can shoot off the dribble. It'll make it intriguing. I think where this series is interesting, and the only kind of sliver of hope that Portland should have over and above, of course, that they have Dame Lillard on their side, is because of this 3-guard rotation that they've got going on.
Right.
You're always putting pressure on the other team's backcourt.
Right.
Whoever's on the court, you have 2 guards at any point almost. So then they've got to bring their A game defensively because you've got 2 out of 3 guards will play at all times and all of them can score. Right. That puts pressure on the Denver Nuggets defense, which isn't all that great to begin with. They're okay. So that's the only interesting angle. But otherwise, even without Jamal Murray, I think Jokic with all of those guys, with Gordon slashing and all the stuff that they can do, I think it's too much size for Portland, just like they found out against the Lakers last season. It's too much size with finesse. They had no answer for AD. They won't have an answer for Jokic. And I think that'll decide the series.
I got to agree with you there. I don't think the Portland have enough to stop Nikola Jokic, who's averaging almost a triple-double this season, rightly in the MVP conversation. Trailblazers with that defense, the 29th best defense in the league. How are you going to stop this guy? Especially when you have MPJ shooting 6, he's shooting 50% from 3. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the Jamal Murray injury kind of coming as an opportunity for him, which he grasped with both hands, if not both his legs also.
And he has
So,
zero sense of shame, right? We were talking about this. He'll miss
Yep.
10 shots in a row. He'll still put up that 11th shot, MPJ. And I love that about him. He has zero, just no shame. He'll miss any number. He'll still shoot. And those kind of shooters are always dangerous. Like even in yesterday's game, Draymond played so well in the first half.
Yep.
Put Anthony Davis under so much pressure. And it wasn't helping that AD's shot was entirely off. Like he was 0 for 6 to start the game. And you could see that pressure manifest itself. AD got open for a 3. He didn't take the shot. He dribbled. He came to the interior. He wanted to convert that into a mid-range. That's shaky confidence. MPJ, no sense of shame. He'll miss 10. He'll still shoot the 11th one. And that's an awesome weapon to have. Sometimes a problem, but it's an awesome weapon. It's kind of like a young Kobe.
True, that's a different breed of a player. There, you see Steph Curry, he misses 10 shots. You know that he gets an open shot, he's gonna take it. Same with Dame Lillard.
Yeah.
MPJ is in that category where
Correct.
he will just take the shot if there's a shot. That's the Western Conference. The Utah Jazz is the 4th game. They'll probably play the Memphis Grizzlies or the Warriors. Warriors should get through this, but I don't think it's going to be an easy game. The Memphis Grizzlies are a dangerous unit, and they ran them close last time. They beat the Spurs. They kind of got a comfortable victory against that experienced Spurs team. The Warriors are going to be tired after the Lakers game. Any chance of an upset there?
Tough. They are going to be tired, and it's not an easy clash by any means. But I just can't see Steph Curry coming this far and taking it easy in one game. And if he's not taking it easy, and by the way, Memphis have no one that can put the clamps on. It's not like they have a Jrue Holiday or someone who, even then, you can't really shut down Steph, but you can slow him down a bit. Memphis have no one. So unless Steph Curry fails to have a field day, I think it's his. Hey, last season, when Dame Lillard got Portland to the playoffs, was it the Grizzlies they beat in the play-in game?
Yes.
Back-to-back
You get
years,
Steph Curry
man.
1 year and you get...
I mean, 1 year you run into Lillard, 1 year you run into Steph. It's tough. That's hard on Ja Morant, but yeah, it'll be an upset. It'll be a mighty upset if the Grizzlies win. I expect the Warriors to cruise through.
All right. So that was the Western Conference. Fun 5 games actually, including the Warriors game. Looking forward to that this weekend. Coming to the Eastern Conference, the big game there, the Milwaukee Bucks taking on Miami Heat, a repeat again from last season. Milwaukee Bucks, if they're going to make the conference final and eventually the finals, it's the toughest route ever to reach that final, wouldn't it be? You got to beat the Miami Heat, then you got to beat Brooklyn Nets, and then you got to beat the Philadelphia Sixers. And after you do all of that, you'll probably run into the Lakers at the end. That is going to be the toughest route ever to a championship.
Who would have had just a tough route? Because Lakers, mind you, come in through a plane. Then they play the Suns. Then they play, who do they play next?
Denver.
Oof. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I get the allure of beating the Nets and then the Sixers, but yeah, I think if it's a Bucks Lakers finals, you'll probably have 2 exhausted teams just trying to get it over with and go home. But
the Miami Heat were a team that shut down the Bucks entirely last season. They kind of got a comfortable victory. You got to remember that Eric Bledsoe was injured for game 1. Giannis got injured early in game 4 and then he missed the entire game 5, which was all Chris Middleton by himself. By then the series was over when Giannis was injured, and Miami Heat won that comfortably. Miami Heat, you said about teams not improving, not upgrading. Miami Heat haven't done really much either, right? I mean, they've remained the same team. In fact, they've deteriorated a bit because they lost that Goran Dragic is a year older. Tyler Hero has lost his shooting skills. He looks a totally different player from what he did last season.
They lost Crowder too, who I thought was really good last season. Crowder?
Who? Yeah, Crowder. Oh, yeah, Crowder was amazing in the playoff bubble last season. So they lost him as well. So Miami Heat have kind of downgraded themselves. But it's the playoffs. You bring Jimmy Butler to the playoffs, it's a different Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
You think they have a chance against the Bucks this season, especially given that the Bucks have upgraded themselves?
No, and this is despite, you know how much I love the Miami franchise, the coaching, the GM, the team, the culture. It's a bridge too far. They've lost some impact players, either through exits or through just age and wear and tear. So Jay Crowder, who was amazing, 3-and-D, like the definition of a playoff 3-and-D guy. Dragic is a year older. I think last season itself, he kind of rose from the ashes. He seemed finished and then he kind of just shot up in the playoffs. Maybe he does that again. Who knows? But Tyler Hero's case is curious, right? Did he drop off, or did he reach a certain peak that he never should have that early? and now you're
Mhm.
seeing the realistic development of Tyler Hero. He's very young. Like none had a more rationalized growth curve.
True.
So I think it's too much for them to face the Bucks this season, given how they shape up. But they're a feisty team, Miami. Wouldn't be surprised if they take the Bucks to 6. Bucks shouldn't allow it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Because Dragic will always have at least one game where he just wakes up and like gets off his crutches and has like game-changing performance. But I think the Bucks are too much. I think they play both ends of the court exceptionally well. DiVincenzo has had a breakout year as that impactful kind of pesky 3-and-D kind of guy. Drew Holiday is a baller, more so in the playoffs. If you've never seen Drew Holiday in the playoffs, you're in for a treat. Giannis, I think, is finally ready. He still doesn't have a jump shot. His free throws still suck. But I think he's added so much to his repertoire in terms of finishing anywhere between mid-range and the rim, 18 feet and in. It's not just the bulldozing dunks anymore. There's a lot of finesse. There's hook shots. There's back to the basket, low post work. There's all kinds of finger rolls and floaters. I think he's upgraded his arsenal quite a bit. He goes left and shoots now, which didn't do all that often before. That's a Shaq-like move, shooting over the head, going to the left. So it'll be interesting. I think they're too strong, especially defensively. Milwaukee, and then they've got a firepower offense. I just don't see it happening. There were too many players to make a difference. Connaughton, I think, has had a great year also. So they should get it done in 5. Wouldn't be surprised if Heat stretch it to 6, but that's about as far as it'll go.
Do you think not having the pressure of being the top seed and then the favorites helps Milwaukee this time? Because last 2 seasons you had the MVP on your team. You finished top of the Eastern Conference, which means you're expected to go to the finals at least, and you have that pressure bearing on you all the time. This time, all the attention is focused on the Nets. All the attention is focused on the Sixers, and Milwaukee has silently been the same team. They've been consistently getting those wins. They stayed in contention all the year, and they've gotten better strength to strength. They've experimented a much more than they did in the previous years. You think that kind of helps them this time, that there's not much attention and Giannis can play away from all the limelight?
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they've been pacing themselves this season. It seems almost a conscious effort, not to avoid topping the league, but to go about it at their own pace, running their own experiments. Because the entire first stretch, like at least the first 20 games or so of the season, if not more, I know that for sure, maybe some more. It looked like they were making a conscious effort not to run all their plays through Giannis.
Yep.
Get more people involved. Can Drew get the offense involved? Can he go off the dribble? Can they get DiVincenzo and Connaughton and everyone else to shoot those threes? And I thought they did a mighty fine job of that, because by the time they came to the latter part of the season, they had more threats than one offensively.
True.
Middleton again had a solid year. Drew is a significant step up on Bledsoe offensively. They were defensively also, but right now we're talking about the offense. And a lot of their role players have started coming of age, Connaughton and DiVincenzo. So in doing all that, they seem better prepared. This isn't just a team that put the ball in Giannis's hands and said, go be the MVP, go take us to the top of the league. This is the team that looked like they were planning for the long haul. Okay, league standings are great, but how do we get in the best fighting shape for the playoffs? It seemed to be a conscious effort. And that's what I'm banking on, because I think it's going to pay off. I don't know if they'll win the chip this season or even get to the finals, but I think this could be the biggest turning point in their path to an eventual championship, which I think they will win in the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun. I mean, the second round, if they're going to face the Brooklyn Nets, I know I'm banking on the Milwaukee Bucks to take on the Brooklyn Nets. It's not going to be as easy as it seems for the Brooklyn Nets, but we'll come to that at a later date.
Right.
Talking about revenge, Milwaukee aiming for revenge against Miami. How much would Kyrie Irving be looking forward to facing his former team, Boston Celtics? Because they didn't really have the greatest of parting, did they? And the Nets now are probably the strongest team in the NBA, at least in the Eastern Conference. They have the 3 superstars, Harden, KD, and Kyrie. How do you even stop them? Celtics, unfortunately, have lost their second best player, or probably even the best player, I could call it. Kind of split there, Jaylen Brown.
I think Tatum put that to rest with his performance the other night. I think
probably, yeah. They had a terrible run in the last end of the season. They lost 10 of the last 15 games before the play.
Yeah.
Do you think they would pose any sort of challenge to the Brooklyn Nets?
I don't see it. The first step to even hoping to stop the Nets is at least having three capable defenders on those
Mhm.
three big stars of the Brooklyn Nets. They're not all going to be on the court all the time, but you've got to have an answer for each, or one guy that can defend both. Problem with one guy that can defend both Kyrie and Harden is then he's forever on the court if
Yep.
the Nets choose to rotate, right? So you need three defenders. Who are Boston's three? There's Tatum. You would have to put him on Durant because size.
Yep.
I think he'll do a good job. He'll do as good a job as possible on Durant. Let's just say
Yeah.
that. Uh, then there's Marcus Smart. Exceptionally capable. I'd put him on Harden because he's the guy you've got to stop. You stop Harden, you put a huge dent in the Brooklyn Nets plans because he's the genesis of their offense. He's the distributor. So you
Right.
clamp down on that, you're creating a bottleneck in the supply chain of assists. But then there's Kyrie Irving, a nightmare to guard on most nights for anyone. You have no clue what he's going to hit you with. It could be on the court or in the press conference. You have absolutely no clue what this guy's going to do next or say next. Um, who's that guy for Boston? They don't have that third guy. Kemba's going to guard Kyrie. He just break his ankles in game one. It's not going to happen. Kemba can do that right back, by the way, but he's not going to stop Kyrie. So I think they're shortchanged on a critical mass of defenders that they need. Had Jaylen Brown been there, this would have been such a mouth-watering offense against defense clash. But in his absence, I just don't see it. And Brooklyn Nets, their Achilles heel is sort of their big man situation. They've got all kinds of washed up big men, but Boston are pretty much the same.
Yep.
Washed up or
Yep.
otherwise, skill-wise, they're pretty much the same. And this is another one of those teams that did nothing to upgrade themselves for the last 1 year. So I don't see it
Yeah, when
happening.
you have all these stars, you're not going to say it's a clash between Blake Griffin and Tristan Thompson,
Yeah.
the old guards, and who's going to be the deciding factor. I think it's going to
exactly.
be Kyrie and Harden and KD who's really going to rule the roost.
Yeah. No, what I meant was like, let's say you had somebody like an Embiid who's going to just
Yep.
walk all over those guys.
True.
Then, okay, maybe you have an edge elsewhere and not on the perimeter. But Boston don't have that either. So I just don't see any way out for them. It's Nets in 5. I think that's about as far as the series will go. It could be a sweep also.
Okay. I think it'll be a sweep. I don't think I've been watching Boston of late and I think they've been
It'll be
pretty
a
terrible.
statement win if it's a sweep, though.
Yeah. They need that because they're going to face Milwaukee Bucks up
Yeah.
next and they'd be better rested, especially given that all of the superstars have missed significant amount of time this season. I think they would like that rest and get in shape before they face Milwaukee Bucks, who would also be tired after the game against Miami Heat because that's not going to be easy. The kind of underrated matchup in this whole scenario of playoffs is the New York Knicks versus Atlanta Hawks, right? No one's talking about it because you're talking about all the big teams. I think New York Knicks have done incredibly well to take the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, and Hawks have done incredibly well after their kind of disastrous start. Once they replaced their coach, they had a different. They had like 2 seasons, and they finished in the 5th seed. I think this game is going to be the one that is going down to the 7 because every year you have this one series,
could
right?
be,
Last year
yeah.
you had Utah and Denver, you had OKC and the Rockets that went down to 7. The year before you had Portland and Denver that went all the way to 7. I think this is the game that is creating the least noise, but it's going to be the most interesting, the Knicks versus the Hawks. How do you think that's going to go?
May well be a 7-game series. It's a tale of defense against offense. I think the Knicks defense have been exceptionally good this season, surprisingly so. I think most of us we were surprised by how high up the table the Knicks were.
True.
And then like few weeks ago they had the same win-loss record as the Lakers, and that was okay, what's happening? But I think somewhere halfway through the season, until people pointed it out, until I think it was an analyst on ESPN, one of the back-end analytics guys that put out an article, and that's where I first noticed that the Knicks have an exceptional defense. They're right up there, like top 5 in the league at one point. I don't know where they finished.
Yeah, they finished 3rd.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's going to be that defense against what I think is one of the most exciting offenses in the East. I don't know what's with this resurgence of Eastern Conference offenses. They've got so many interesting different ways in which the offense can be run. There's the Westbrook and Beal model, which comes at the cost of Hachimura and Bertans. Then there's the Charlotte Hornets model of just go have fun, think of it as an all-star game. But I think LaMelo and Why am I blanking on his name? Bridges, Miles Bridges. So sorry,
Mhm.
LaMelo and Miles Bridges. That's kind
Oh
of the
yeah.
modern day Jason Kidd and Kenyon Martin. Crazy vision and dunks. Anyway, so coming back to the Hawks are in that mold. An innovative offense that's reinventing the way the game's played somewhat. I think with Trey Young, with Bogdanovich, who's also had 2 seasons, just like the Hawks, like sucked in the first
Yep.
part and then
Yep.
just went off after that. Um, I think Trey Young's vision, his ability to score, the sharpshooters he has around him, Capella, who's been an absolute asset in defense and rebounding. I think this team has far too many players that are peaking at the right time. Let's just say.
Mhm.
And then they've got a
Mhm.
power forward who's coming up. This is his contract year. He's up for
Yep.
renegotiation or signing a new contract, right? So he's going to play lights out. I think it's Collins. That's Collins. If anyone's not connecting the dots, so I think there's just uh, too much in their offense for the Knicks to contain. So I would give Atlanta the edge. This may well be a 7-game series, but I give Atlanta the edge. If I'm if I'm wrong, it'll be like the 15th time this season that the Knicks have proven me wrong. But I think Atlanta have the edge.
Yeah, I think it's gonna go close either way. I give Knicks the edge. I just think Julius Randle is going to slow down the game so much that will frustrate Atlanta Hawks.
Mm.
I think the home crowd support is going to be
Yeah, for sure.
very hostile towards Atlanta, and I think that'll play a part as well. The New York Knicks finally in the postseason. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be super fun to watch. I'm banking on the Knicks here. I think they got to make it out of this round.
By the way, the Atlanta crowd's a nightmare too. It's not an easy place to go and play. Although Knicks have one more game in the Garden.
True, true. And the last game, which kind of got decided today, the 76ers will now play the Washington Wizards, who kind
Sweep.
of ran riot against the Indiana Pacers. Did you see that coming, first of all?
No, absolutely not. I think the Pacers, I think they just ran out of juice. It's just unfortunate the season. They've had so many injuries.
Yep.
And then they had departures. Then they had Levert, but then Levert has some sort of cancerish thing. And then thankfully he recovers from that, comes back, balls out, plays amazingly well. And even in his absence, they discovered Teacher McConnell is a
Yep.
is a legit baller. Miles Turner has had a year. Sabonis has been as amazing as ever. Brogdon injury, unfortunate.
Yep.
And then they find out just before a crucial play-in game, Levert is out.
Yep.
And it's those damn safety protocols again. Can't really curse them. I think they're just necessary. It's the world we're in, but it's just tough luck. And yet they romped home against the inexperienced Charlotte Hornets.
Yep.
And then it looked like they just ran out of gas. It was clear as day they ran out of gas. Anyway, the Wizards against the Sixers. I don't even have anything to say. That should be a sweep. Shame on like I said, the 76ers should stop playing basketball if they can't sweep the Wizards.
Okay.
Doc Rivers, after last season's Game 7 debacle, and another Game 7 debacle where he also tanked the 3-1 lead. I think that's it. Just quit the game of basketball if you can't sweep the Wizards. It should be a sweep. I am calling for a sweep. Let's see how it goes.
I think it should be a sweep too. I think the Wizards will just run out of pace. I mean,
Yeah.
they play at such a breakneck speed, right? You get Westbrook the ball within 2 seconds, he's on the other side of the court and missing a shot or claiming the same rebound,
Yeah.
and then he passes it to Bradley Beal, who will most probably make the shot. So I think that it's not a sustainable way of playing over a 7-game series where you have a game every other day. I don't think the Wizards have enough
Yeah.
pace. If by chance they nick one, that's all they're gonna nick.
Especially with Ben Simmons on the perimeter. And then Embiid, if you take it to the interior, where are you going to go? And even when Embiid's resting, they've got Dwight Howard, who's no slouch at the rim.
Right.
So it's too much. It's too much. It should be a sweep. You're saying it might go to 5. I'm saying they should be ashamed of themselves if it goes to 5. This is the easiest sweep anyone can call in the first round in any conference.
True, I think so. I would agree with you. I mean, if you take the other 1 versus 8, it'd probably be Utah versus the Warriors. That's not going to be a sweep.
Right.
Curry will just rise up and shine for at least one game.
Game
so
at
it's
least,
not
yeah.
gonna be a sweep.
Yeah.
So yeah, this has to be the easiest pick. But I think they have enough quality in Westbrook and Beal itself to probably surprise the Sixers. But I won't be surprised with the 4-0. But I think the Nets beating the Celtics would be a much more cleaner sweep.
Yeah, possibly.
But
Maybe
a lot of
in
games
the
to
East.
look forward to this weekend. 9 games, in fact, 5 in the Western Conference, 4 in the Eastern Conference. Fun talking this with you. That's all the time we have for today. Pretty long episode, but worth it. and I'll catch you after the weekend's games.
All right, man. Sounds good. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.